And good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Biddle. How is everyone?
Absolutely fantastic.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Good.
Well, we are set out to have a talk around the virtual water cooler. Anything that is Linux tech and open source related is on the table for discussion. Got a few things on the docket, but I do want to thank Rocco for having started the Biddle community, where I've truly felt like a member of the nicest group of encouraging and uplifting and wonderful people. Literally everybody, I think. I can't think of anybody I just don't like. That's weird. Who says the Linux community is toxic? Well, they're wrong. Not this one. Anyway, we're going to talk about Fedora today, but before we kick off Fedora, we had a great pre-show conversation about USB fun.
Fun.
And by fun, I mean, well, that's fantastic kind of fun. And so I wanted to start it off with that and see, kind of continue that conversation. It started off with Vash was having issues with some device not powering properly off USB. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I have two USB interfaces here. One is the El Cheapo $29 one from Amazon, and then the other one is a bit nicer. But I'm trying the audio out through the Mac Mini tonight, and USB-A ports on the Mac Mini apparently do not give out any kind of power compared to normal desktops. So it could power one of them, but the one that I could power did not have enough extra gain for the microphone. So it's great. So I had to swap out audio stuff again. It's always fun.
Mike, your mic's not working. Nate.
Nate, yeah, we can't hear you.
No, that would be user error. I would say, well, that's fantastic. And that was fantastic too.
The
Way to
timing
go.
on that was great.
And then Thomas, so you had to swap it to a port in the back instead of the front or something like that? Vash?
You say what? Oh,
So
never mind.
Vash had to swap ports or something to make it work? Play.
No, I had to use USB microphone and plug that into my KVM switch.
Oh, wow.
Good old
That's-
KVMs.
So you really had to wire the thing up like a Christmas tree. Then I see. So I have this little device right here. I don't know how well you can see that. So what I can do is I can monitor how much something is drawing and how much something's providing power. USB-C, USB-C, then USB-A to kind of just put it right in line. There's also a micro USB on this as well that you can use for input, it looks like. Anyway, so what's nice about this is I can then actually see an output of how much power something's drawing. So if I want to see how much power my computer's drawing through the USB-C, because I have it plugged into a dock station, I can see it's usually around 59 watts that it can actually, at maximum, that it'll suck through. But these are, it's a handy little device. I got it on eBay, I think, because that's where I get most of my my goodness. And this actually will help you along on your USB journey. So because it'll actually tell you. It's hard for me to demonstrate that now because if I plug my microphone, it's going to be unfortunate because it might not come back, because that's how pulse audio works. But anyway, so I recommend this. I'll see if I can find a link and
It's
I'll
like
pass it
a
along.
wiggy. I don't know if they call them wiggies, but you plug it into the power outlet and it tells you how much is how it's how much
Or a kilowatt.
is there. Yeah, that.
Yeah. And it'll tell you
It's Nate's MacGyver's tech tool.
I did a video on. I got this USB fan. I was curious how long this fan would run on USB.
What?
And so, yeah, I actually have a video to this on my YouTubes that I did. It's a very unpopular video. Nobody cares. So if you want to see something that nobody cares about, feel free to check it out. I think it might be the last video I did. And I have that's when my life went crazy after that. So, but this is an awesome fan. Shows a clock as it spins, but it's kind of hard to do when I don't have it plugged in. And but that's actually where I want to find how much does this thing actually draw, because I could plug it into a power tool battery. I have a little adapter for USB thing on there, and how long would that run? So I could do some calculations. It's basically, days with how much it draws. But anyway, it's kind of fun, to be able to know what your stuff's doing. And then Thomas had some complaints too. He started like talking about. I had to like keep stopping him numerous times, and then now he's just not talking, so I don't know what's going on. I broke him.
I'm sorry, I was busy. So to preface this, I have a desktop, and it has like an 800 watt power supply and an X570 motherboard, and all of my front USB is USB 3.0 or higher. You'd think that if I just plugged in a USB 3 cable and plugged it into my phone, which supports USB 3, that it would charge at a higher, at least amperage than the normal 5 volts, 1 amp that you get out of your bog standard iPhone charger. But no, it charges at 5 volts, 1 amp, no matter what I do. Come to find out, USB PD in any revision is not part of the normal USB protocol. It's separate. So all of my USB ports only supply 5 volts, 1 amp. So my phone charges extremely slowly. And if I actually want to charge it any faster, I have to plug it into a dedicated charging brick. And the sad part is that means that all of my wireless chargers charge faster than my desktop does.
I need to actually play around with mine, but my motherboard actually has specific ports if it's labeled as charging ports for this situation, I believe. So I think they may actually have a higher throughput.
I don't have that, unfortunately. Thing is, like all the cabling to wire up the front I/O is pretty beefy. So you'd think it's capable of handling that. And I'm sure it is, but it just doesn't push it. Yeah. And it's probably a motherboard issue, honestly, because like I have a 3950X. I don't think that's going to affect my USB power output unless somehow my 800 watt power supply isn't powerful enough, which if USB part picker is anything to go by, I should have surplus power. So yeah, probably just a motherboard issue.
It could be that some ports are just like low power ports. Like I know on this computer here, like Vash just said, like they're charging ports, and then some that are not. So who knows?
Yeah,
it might be just some power limited ports, which it seems odd that it'd be the front of the computer.
Yeah,
it seems like that. That just seems kind of mean.
That's actually pretty common, from what I've seen. Like a lot of times, it especially in the past, it was even worse. But a lot of times, like if you had like a USB, hard drive that didn't have separate power, you couldn't oftentimes plug it into the front power ports or front USB ports in the past, just because it wouldn't draw enough power. That's
a big reason for this, by the way, is because those ports are typically like case dependent and aren't like part of the actual motherboard. So you're basically supplying power to an external device. So it's a USB hub, but not an actual USB, like actual I/O piece of the motherboard.
Yeah, it's not even a powered USB hub.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yay, technology and consistency.
I have another US. No, go ahead, Thomas.
I was gonna say it's no better with the new stuff that the USB forum or whatever they're called have just come out with.
Oh no, it's worse. It's much worse.
Way worse. I honestly feel like, so I understand that USB-C is a physical connector and that is a physical standard, and the USB protocol is something completely different. Hypothetically, you could have USB over an HDMI cable.
Yeah.
That's fine. I get it. What they need is they need to say, all right, here's your USB 4 protocol, or I guess thinking at this point, USB 5. Built in is USB PD 240 watt. You have to support both or you get nothing. And if you don't support both, then you're a lower tier. Plain and simple.
I think the reason they don't do that is because one, that would just be like hardware manufacturers would make everything extremely expensive, even for things that don't need to be. But also because 99% of people probably don't run into issues. Like the majority of USB-C connections are going to do exactly what the user needs. Like I think it's really edge case. Like users like me might run into it, but like I've not actually like had to look at what standard my USB port was doing or what standard my dock supported ever.
See-
I've like just plugged it in and plugged in a display and camera and mic and monitor, and all of that stuff just worked.
See, I have actually had to pay attention to at least the power rating of the cable, because I have used cables that only supported 5 volts 1 amp and pushed 5 volts 2.5 amps over it, or 5 volts 3 amps through it, and
But
it
did you
works. No, it didn't die, but I've had those cables last significantly less time than a cable
Oh, yeah.
that supports, a higher rating.
Oh, yeah.
And I've had higher rating cables that I've only pushed 5 volts 1 amp through last for forever.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like they just need to have that baseline. You have to support both the pin out protocol and power delivery settings in order to reach a certain level. And if you don't need that data transfer, you just need the power rating, great. You can do the data transfer too once something like that comes into your life that needs that data transfer.
Yeah.
If you need the data transfer but not the power, fine. If something needs that amount of power later on in your life, great.
So basically,
No.
like all physical connectors built to like for a certain specification should all have the same capabilities.
Essentially, yes. And I understand that that would make things more expensive, but I would rather have to pay more for a cable, but know that it is functionally at least equivalent to this set of standards, and I know it can at least perform this well.
What about hardware that was designed and manufactured before the most current specification came out?
Then it gets grandfathered in.
Yeah, like ideally, like it should all just connect.
Yeah, because like USB is backwards compatible. Like you can plug in something that supports USB 4 to, assuming it has a port that supports it, a device that supports USB 1.1, and it will still work, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
That's the idea. It doesn't mean it actually works. But 9 times out of 10, it should.
It technically works.
Right. It
Yeah.
should work, because really the only difference should just be like how beefy the cable is, the frequency it's running at, and extra pins that may or may not be used. And as long as we're using USB-C for everything, all the cables need to support everything too. That way you don't have a cable that's only USB 2.0 but has USB-C, and you're trying to charge through it and it only supports 5 volts 1 amp, and you're trying to push 240 watts. That ain't gonna go over well.
So I think the reason that isn't happening is primarily because one, a manufacturer can choose to support a specific specification. Like if I decide to design USB-C hardware right now, I do not have to use the like latest standard. And I don't think I should have to either if my device has like no reason to do that.
Right.
And
like I'm not saying they have to.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is like what should actually be happening is that it should be able to understand the capabilities of anything plugged into it. So if a cable is rated at a certain amount, the system should only be able to push that amount through it anyway. There has to be some kind of intelligence there within the system to determine its limits.
Right. And unfortunately, once you start having that intelligence in the cable, that actually brings in and also brings in security issues. There have actually been lightning cables have a level of intelligence to them. And there have been reports of people putting like malware into the chips in lightning cables. And once you start having that sort of intelligence in a USB cable, and it's not just things going straight through, just straight conductors.
I just plug the pins for my flash drives directly into the power outlet in my wall, and that seems to go well.
Oh yeah, totally.
It'll work
Gets you into the power system real quick.
It'll work 100% of the time. So what probably happens, I don't know about lightning cables, but I do know that with USB cables, actually with any power cables, a device on either end of the cable can actually detect how much resistance is in the line, and then it'll adjust accordingly. Because if there's resistance in the line, it can calculate out how much power can be pushed through there without melting down the cable.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, it should do that. I just have no idea how USB determines that. But I'm sure
So-
it's there because I feel like at this point it should legally be required to be there.
I
for
think
safety
part of it
reasons.
is so I know you can like manually make a dumb charger by just shorting the data pins together. So I'm not sure if that has something to do with it or not. But you know, that might be a clue of some sort.
Can we
That's
all
how
at
that's
least
how phone
can we-
chargers work, right?
Can we all at least
Some of
agree
them.
that the micro and the mini, we are so glad they're gone because
Oh, yeah.
that was
Oh,
all
yeah.
such a pain.
I still have stuff that uses both.
It always
like my
works the third time around.
My 3D printer has mini USB, so I can't use any micro USB stuff on it, and it
Oh.
sucks.
I know.
And what's even worse is when I plug that cable in, the 3D printer turns on even if the power switch is off. So I can't leave it plugged into my Octopi.
That's
Um,
terrible.
Gordana
Yeah.
says it's called USB power delivery, and it's a standard. So apparently there is a standard when it comes to USB power delivery. So it probably detects resistance in the lines and everything else, is my guess.
There is a standard for that. I want the USB protocol and the USB power delivery standards to be merged. That way, you know, if
Yeah.
you support
I
like
think-
USB 5, you support
I
both
think
things.
PD is a subset of the USB protocol.
It
I
is.
think
It's like an extension.
Yeah.
From what I understand. It's weird. And the USB 240 watt stuff is an extension of USB power delivery.
I'm
It's
excited.
not, it's weird.
So just a little demonstration here. I do have this like little USB thing
Oh, that's
for
sweet.
for batteries, and then if I plug this little bugger in there, it'll light up and it'll tell me the voltage. So it's 5.19 volts it's delivering. Probably can't see that because I can't focus on it. But then when I do plug in my things, if I can actually fit it in there, then it'll actually then show me how much amperage it's drawing. So, which 0.31 amps. So it'll last on this battery a very long time. But anyway, very cool fan. I love it.
That's pretty neat, actually.
So
one time, I stripped a couple of wires and put them into the electrical outlet, and then I touched the other end to my crutches, and it fused the crutch.
nice.
Oh,
Was it
don't do
aluminum
that.
crutches? Probably.
You know the part of the crutch that you press the button to like move it
Mhm.
up and down? It was
Yeah,
that little metal bit, and
Oh,
the crutches are no longer adjustable. It was also very bright. I don't recommend it.
yeah. You're doing what's called welding.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
That's how we
Well,
learn,
cool.
by doing stupid things.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Now, Scrapjaw, I saw he just popped on, and Donald, they haven't said anything yet. So I don't know if you want to do like some mic checks real quick so we can, on the fly before we get into Fedora. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think I'm probably all right.
Yep, you sound great. And I don't know what happened. Scrapjaw if you can. If not, that's okay. We can do it later.
We'll do
So
it live.
we'll do it live. We'll do it on the roll. A lot of the comments, if you look at the comments of the different shows, there's usually a complaint of somebody fiddling with something, making too much noise. It's like, all right, calm down, fella. And then the other one is microphone levels are not the same. So yeah, I'll just try and do the best I can on the fly to adjust it. So don't be offended if I ask you to turn it up or down. It's nothing personal, just business, I guess. Lord, business. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Fedora. That's our distro exploration. The intent is to talk about the different aspects of the OS and discuss our experience after having used it. I know some people here are probably some regular Fedora users, so they're going to probably put the smackdown on my complaints. And so this is a discussion that by which only objective and constructive input is what's desired. So non-objective opinions, just saying it's garbage is not good because it doesn't really help, developers or people who are interested in knowing what others thought about it. It's just not helpful. So we want to be as beneficial to the conversation as possible. Now, if there are issues with it, so any low lights of the distribution, we can talk about those things. Just do it in a constructive manner. So the point is to highlight the positives. Let's not ignore the lowlights. And remember that this is a labor of love of many people, so let's not poo-poo on it. So Fedora, a little bit about Fedora. It's Fedora Linux is a Linux distribution developed by a community-supported Fedora project, which is sponsored primarily by Red Hat, a subsidiary of IBM. With additional support from other companies, Fedora contains software distributed under various free and open source licenses that aims to be on the leading edge of free technologies, which is very true. Fedora is the upstream source of the commercial Red Hat Enterprise Linux distribution, and for CentOS, Fedora is a fork of Red Hat Linux since RHEL was discontinued in 2003. Red Hat Linux. So since release of Fedora 30, 5 different editions are currently available. You have Workstation, focused on the personal computer, Server for, you guessed it, servers. CoreOS, focused on cloud computing. Silverblue, focused on immutable desktop. Specialized to container-based workflows and IoT. And a focus on IoT devices. As of February 2016, Fedora has an estimated 1.2 million users, probably more now, I'm guessing, which includes the man, Linus Torvalds, as of May 2020, anyway. The creator of the Linux kernel and what we're enjoying today. So there are a few ISO options, and I omitted some of them, but there's the default is GNOME desktop. Then you have a spin of KD Plasma, another of XFCE, LXQT, or Qt, LXQt, whatever you want to call it. A Mate Compiz desktop, Cinnamon, LXDE, SOS, I don't know that one, but I feel like I should have tried it now. i3, Tiling Window Manager, and then there's, in the Fedora Labs, the one that I recognized there was Fedora Jam. So, by a show of hands, I guess, or we'll just actually start, never mind. We'll start with Schickel. Which one did you choose? Which spin or which flavor or whatever you want to call it?
I had initially gone with Fedora Workstation, but then I switched to Fedora Silverblue.
Excellent.
Yes, and I like it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And did anybody else try Silverblue here? No. Eris, which I think you said I think you told me you tried Plasma. Is that correct?
Yeah, I tried the KDE version, and at the end I briefly tried the GNOME one.
Okay, cool. I went GNOME first, and then toward the end, I gave Plasma a spin to see if I had the same problems as GNOME. So excellent. We can have some chit chats about that. Vash, I don't know, did you get a chance to try Fedora?
I did not.
Okay, no worries. Then you're a great guy to ask questions, and so you're the perfect question man. Colin.
Yes, I made a video about the installer, so I wanted to get to know the installer a bit better. So that's what I've been mainly doing this week. I have been messing around with it this morning a little bit, but yeah, mainly the installer for me.
Excellent. So did you do that on the GNOME version, the primary?
Yeah, just the flagship Fedora workstation. Yep.
Okay, excellent. And Thomas, did you get a chance to do Fedora?
I did not. I've been busy this week.
Then you're a great question man too. Excellent. So we got 2 question men. Jinda, I don't know if you get a chance to give it a whirl.
Yeah, I gave KDE.
Okay, excellent. And then Scrapshot, I don't know if you're there. My guess is you probably did Jam because it seems like that would fit your deal, but no.
Nah, nope.
That's all right.
Not a thing. I'm actually kind of trying to get at the moment still messing with the stuff on Garuda, so I can give you guys like a long-term
good
experience update on that later. I won't interject now, but I don't like
Absolutely.
Pipewire. That's my short story.
Ooh, that
'Cause
sounds
I
like a good
don't-
discussion.
So we'll get to it.
All right, excellent. We'll throw that at the end of the distro discussion. And Donald, I believe you are a seasoned Fedora fellow. I could be wrong though.
Hardly.
Hardly. I was
Yeah.
wrong.
I tried Fedora a number of years ago, had some bad experiences with Fedora and kind of put it aside. After hearing so many good reports about the current version of Fedora, I decided to try it. I installed the KDE version initially, and that worked pretty well. And then I went to the everything version and put BSPWN on it, and I have been really happy with it. I'm impressed.
Excellent. What is your normal distribution? I don't recall. I'm a little
Well,
slow on the
I
uptake.
had been using Arch with BSPWN, and recently I switched to Debian and
Okay.
put that on.
Excellent. All right, so we got a nice variety of things here to talk about. So this is great. So the installation process. Did anybody here have any issues? And hold up, Schickel, because I have different questions for you. Any issues or maybe any comments about the process? If it gave you any problems, or if you had any stumbling points or whatnot. For me personally, I didn't have any stumbles. Just one area of critique, but I want others to talk first. You can jump in. I don't know. Whoever wants to jump in there, just jump in.
Well, I did a few different installs, but the basic install to hard drive, if you just do a simple install to a hard disk, which I did all my stuff on VirtualBox, it's a fairly simple process, really, to be honest. But it does use ButterFS by default out of the box. And somebody in my chats on my YouTube channel told me to run free-h and just to have a look at the memory that it creates, because it does. I mean, I'm on a 40-odd 50 gig hard drive here on VirtualBox. It created 7.7 gig memory, which I'll have to think 8 gigs, and 8 gigs of swap. So that's quite a fair bit out of the box.
To explain the swap, by the way, it
Yep.
isn't actually swap.
It's ZRAMs.
Yes. So all of
ZRAM?
that is not on disk, so you won't actually see a partition for it. It's a compressed space inside of your system memory that'll allow more stuff to fit inside of it.
Right. Is that just to complement the ButterFS or something? Is it in some way, or?
No, it's actually just it's just a new memory management thing. It's kind of like how what Mac OS does and what Windows does, where memory ZRAM, yes, it'll get compressed because memory, generally speaking, memory is very easily compressible because of the type of data it is. So it's relatively cheap computational wise to compress memory very efficiently. So
Okay.
and they've also coupled that. This happened a couple releases back, but they've coupled that change with a different out of memory handling system. So overall, you should see a better experience where, like, if you in the past, if you would run out of memory, the system would, thrash going on to swap and things would be horrible and miserable. But now it has a ton of space for stuff to take up. And if things are still not behaving, I think it just murders them. So it keeps your whole system from eating the dirt.
That's interesting. So is that a kernel thing that they activated, or is that some sort of special sauce that Fedora has that it can do that?
Any distro can do it, but I think it is explicitly supported by the kernel.
You have to set it up yourself. I run it on Ubuntu myself.
There's a nice little GitHub script that I'll link, which basically just sets one up by with the ZRAM CTL and creates the space. But yeah.
And you don't have to be on ButterFS to do that, no?
No, you can be on anything because it's just in memory, so any on disk format will work.
That's interesting. I said I didn't know anything about that, and that's an automatic. Wait, is that automatic in Fedora? Because I didn't even check to see. But Colin, you said that was an automatic. You didn't set that up special and they
No,
threw
I
that in there.
didn't. No, I just installed to the hard drive and go, and that was pretty much it. So that's what it's set up out of the box.
Oh, well, I had no idea. See, you learn something every day.
Well,
So I got
most of the
Got the VM going over here.
most of the OSs when you run an ISO and you run them in VirtualBox, they run ZRAM for a small little hard drive for you can try and install a small program set. And that's kind of how they work. But some of the distros now run it continuously, even after you're done using VirtualBox to install it. If that makes sense.
It does. I think that's pretty wild. Man, these what people come up with and
For
what
some
they're able to do.
crazy
Yes.
numbers here, by the way, I've actually been able to test this on a 32 gigabyte space of memory. I've been able to fit in 64 gigabytes of RAM usage just because of ZRAM compression. It's pretty
That's
great.
pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah, you literally basically doubled my effective memory space.
I don't have issues of running out of RAM on my laptop or my desktop thing. The 32 gig on one and 40 on the other. I've never actually pushed that. So what were you doing?
I just really wanted to see what would happen.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's kind of
So I
opening
was
up Chrome or something.
I was opening up absolutely everything that I possibly could. And then I found out that you can also just
ECOS, that would set up ZRAM so they would use the maximum capacity possible. So I think I had like 12 gigs of swap or something like that. And I only have 8 gigs of RAM.
So looking at this, it seems to replicate the same amount of this ZRAM or ZRAM, whatever it is. It seems to replicate exactly the same amount of memory that's created, yeah, or that's existing.
It's 8 gigs on Fedora. I think always.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you get? So you set yours up manually.
On my other
32.
system, yeah. You can also
Right.
change how much it's using. So there's like a ZRAM control a command, but I on this system here, like I've got 24 gigs of RAM, but I still have the default 8 gig swap.
That's pretty wild.
And does it actually physically take up that much room, or you said it's compressed and it's only? How
Yeah,
does
so
that
it's a
work?
little weird. So like it won't actually use that 8 gigabytes of space. So like if you look at your memory monitor, it won't always show like 8 gigabytes being used. But when data gets compressed in that ZRAM swap, that data is essentially like it's physically smaller than the actual uncompressed data. So it takes up less space.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And decompressing and compressing it on the fly is exponentially faster than even throwing it on an NVMe. So it's super inexpensive.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
It's
really wild.
It's pretty handy. It's actually that this particular type of function is why even on only 8 gigabytes, the new MacBooks are not entirely terrible, because a lot of that memory gets squeezed to hell. To heck. Sorry.
That's right. I'm sure no children are watching at this time. So totally cool. That's interesting. That yeah, I had no idea about any of that. That's pretty wild. All right, so the what I thought was really neat about the installer was how you didn't actually set your username and password in the install itself. At least for the GNOME version, the Plasma version you had to, unless I did it wrong. But what I thought was neat about that is like, so I'm just just noodling around in my head. It would be really awesome then you could actually set up a computer for somebody with Fedora Workstation, not just install it, shut it down, hand it to them, and then they can do everything on their own. There's no more, like the handoff is complete. You don't have to walk through the process of setting up a user. And I thought that was really cool. I think there's some other distributions that do that. Does anybody know what those are? I don't recall. I think Elementary does something like that. Doesn't it?
Yes.
Doesn't Elementary? Okay. Are there others? Does Pop! OS do that?
I think it used to.
So
I
this
can't
is known as
remember.
OEM install, and
Yeah.
most large distros have this capability. but it's typically something that you have to do. Like you mainly have to tell it that you want to do that. Like Ubuntu, if you remember in the boot menu, there's an OEM install option. If you go through that, you'll get the same experience.
Leo brings up a good thought in the chat. It says compression is usually CPU intensive. I wonder what impact ZRAM has on battery life.
Very little.
Well, there we go.
Because part of the reason compression is so computationally impactful is because it essentially, you have a string of characters and you basically create like a tiny equation that explains what's in that string, right? So if you have patterns, it basically folds those in and says, well, there's 3 zeros here and 4 ones there and 8 zeros there and whatever. And instead of actually having all those written out, it just tells you, yeah, this is there and that's there, and there's this many of them. And that's like a super basic version of it. Like actual proper compression algorithms will take in patterns of like very large predictable chunks of data and be able to squeeze them down by doing some crazy stuff. But memory in particular, the type of data that's often stored in it is very, very very basic in a way. Like it's all important, but it's all very easy to compress. There's not very many complex patterns in the majority of system data, or system memory. So the simpler the data is, or the more easy it is to find and squeeze patterns, the less resource intensive it is. And if you use the right compression algorithm, you can increase that efficiency more.
It's interesting. So then the way the swap is set up is it uses ZRAM, uses a chunk of your RAM to give you whatever amount of swap is set up.
Yeah.
In this case, 4 gig, but it's only taking up about 200 meg or so of my actual RAM, at least from what I can tell right now. Like the actual, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it doesn't reserve that. I don't know.
If you type in ZRAM CTL, like ZRAM CTL, it'll actually show you the stats for yours. So it'll show you how much is in there and how compressed it is.
Huh. 12 kilobytes.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
That's really awesome. I did not know the existence of this thing. So, wow, that's really cool.
I don't know. I don't need to know this. I just read too much.
No, I'm really glad you did.
Yeah, it's good info. Anyway,
I found that the installer seemed to be way simpler now than it was the last time I installed Fedora. I feel like they've taken some chapters out of some other distributions books about simplifying the installation process, and I'm pretty impressed with that as well. So I don't know if Eris, if you had anything you wanted to throw in there, or Shickle. I know you have some stuff in the notes.
I did. I don't remember what I wrote.
With a lack of linearity.
Oh yeah. For a lot of, I mean, I know it's an old thing, but like if you go into like format your disks, you then have to jump back out of that menu to go back to the other menu and then jump back out. So, but I mean, I think the good thing is that the majority of this is pretty self-explanatory stuff. It's like stuff you'd see in any other installer. So it's not inherently more complex. It's just that there's not like a one direction that the installer flows in. You jump into partitioning, then you jump back out, then you jump into locale, then you jump back out. They've also removed, at least for the workstation version, they've removed setting the host name in this part of the installer. It's actually part of the installed system now. So
the way the other distros work is there's like a list that you go from like top to bottom, or maybe you hit next and go to the next screen. Yep. And this has like 3 things, 2 of them side to side, 1 on the bottom or something. So I think that's what Chico's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see the merits of a non-linear installer, but I think that, like, as far as like new user, they might have some headache with that, I suppose you could say.
I will say, huge
it
props. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it depends. If you're used to installing, if it's a new user and they haven't used other installers, then they may be okay. I found it incredibly confusing when I first started using it. So I was so used to using mostly Ubiquity, right, or Calamares, which just flows.
It's just
right?
next, next, next.
But when you get into the Anaconda installer, it to start with, it's just like, what do I do here? I mean, you got this done button and you got to click done, and then you click on something like Shickle said, it takes you into another page, and it's just completely different to what you're normally used to. I don't know about other installers outside of Calamares and Ubiquity, because I know, I think what you use, Nate, their installers
SUSE.
probably
SUSE has their own
yeah.
installer.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I find it odd the done button. Sometimes sometimes for the next section you go on the bottom, and I think for like the hard drive you go on the top left.
Yeah.
It's like they should really pick one or the other. Like sort of disjointed that way.
I also think that done is probably not the right choice of words for the button, because it should be like, yeah.
I think that also putting it in the top left corner is a little bit confusing, because like when you're done with a page, you get to the lower, right hand side of the page, and then you turn the page like with a physical book. So having it in the top left is confusing, I think, just from because you're scanning down the page, which is how we go from left to right, top down. So it seems like when you're done with that page, it should be next or complete or something should be on that corner. So I don't know why it's on the top. I mean,
I agree with that.
I mean, what else, I guess?
We do read from left to right. So, I mean, sometimes I think if something's not in that order, we get a bit confused because we're so used to reading in that order.
Part of that may be just who originally wrote the Anaconda installer, because not all languages are left to right.
Oh, okay.
He was a bat and he hung upside down in front of his desk. Is that why?
Well, like the thought process behind the idea is like, so Chinese and Japanese can be written from left to right, but traditionally are written from top to bottom and then from left to right.
Okay, so that should be on the bottom.
I agree, it should be on the bottom, but being on the left still isn't completely out of the question for some cultures. Like Arabic, I believe they read from right to left.
They do,
but they also read from right to left and then from top to bottom.
Right.
So being in specifically the top left corner doesn't make a lot of sense. Nope. Bottom left hand corner would make more sense, because like even in like Japan, books are bound backwards. So the logic about turning a book, that would actually apply for them, but not for us.
I think traditionally the OK button, just from going from Windows, it's always like bottom right. Now that could switch, but I think more than anything, just needs to be consistent. I think that's the main thing that I would say.
Part of it may also just be they intentionally put it in a place that's unintuitive, because you're looking for it, so you're more likely to look throughout the page and look over your settings. You're actually more likely to read. You're not just gonna be like, okay, I think I'm good, and hit okay, and then all of a sudden, oh no, I put in the wrong password.
Because you got your selections, right? You got your keyboard and geographical location and whatever, and then your disk option. So I would have thought that they would be on the left, and then the OK button on the right. So you finish there and you go to your right or whatever. I mean, that would sort of make a little bit more sense as to flowing a little bit better.
Yeah. I think we need to get a Fedora or Red Hat dev in here to explain this decision.
Yeah. It was my bad. I should have probably contacted somebody on that, but
it's just interesting, though. I mean, it's not a problem once you know how it works. Really, at the end of the day, it's fine.
Well, if it's any consolation, it dates back to April 18th of 1999, so we may never know why.
So
that far.
DJ Ware says in the chat, he says Anaconda was written 22 years ago, and the design goal was to make it work on a teletype terminal.
Don't know what that means, but cool.
So if you hit don't do it now, Shickle. Maybe hit Control Alt and like F1. It'll
Oh,
take
is
you
that
through
what
teletype
that's?
terminal.
Is that what a TTY
Yes.
is?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that's what it meant.
So
I don't. Sorry, Nate. I was going to say I don't remember the Anaconda installer being like this quite a number of years ago.
It's changed.
It's changed. It wasn't. It didn't used to work. It never used to work that way. I'm pretty sure, because I started pretty much Linux almost with the Anaconda installer with Fedora. I don't remember it being like that.
You know, it's not. I mean, whether it's set for the teletype or not, I mean, it's cool. I mean, it is what Fedora wants to do. I don't really care. I just don't like it. That's really
I
what it
feel
boils
like
down
we
to.
could do a parody where it's like the Anaconda don't install unless it's top left, hon.
So DJ Ware added to his comment. He says it's a terminal that prints, like physically prints. I think.
Yeah. So I was at the Vintage Computer Fest in early September, and they had an old teletype there. So like, it had like wheels and everything inside of it. So when it printed, it kind of shook the ground a little bit. It was pretty amazing.
Are you telling me that you had to literally build a nuclear reactor to get Wi-Fi working or to get like internet working back in 1999, but you could get a printer working? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, I guess it used to be easier. Maybe.
Wow.
The way you would get feedback, you know, like those texts that pops up when you do in the terminal, that would be printed out for you.
That's
from the computer. That's your your feedback from the computer, basically.
I don't know why done on the top would be of any benefit though.
Just for fun.
Well, speaking of the installer, I did some different installs. I was trying to replicate my system that I have that I'm running here, and I created two different VirtualBox machines with two SATA hard drives and another one with two NVMe hard drives. So, and then I actually with Gparted set up the disk with existing partitions. So I wanted to actually install to existing partitions. I wanted to know what that was like. That was confusing for me, but you know, I do get confused with things pretty easy, but I worked it out in the end.
I love the advanced part of the Anaconda installer, like partitioning stuff, but
custom.
It's a maze though. Like
it is.
If you go into the other one, I think they call it Blivet, it's like even more advanced. It like you can manage like logical volumes and like I think like cache devices and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. It is an absolute trip. It's wacky. I have a huge respect for installers that can manage all of that stuff, like because I know like Yast does it in OpenSUSE, and if you know what you're looking for, it's great, but boy, is it a maze.
It is, because actually when you open it up in custom, it doesn't show your partitions. It comes under unknown. So you got to click that and then all your partitions are shown.
Yeah.
But then you've got to, what I didn't know was you've got to physically type the mount point up the top. But then there's a little reformat button box there, but I didn't know that. This is all on video, by the way. This is the one that I uploaded yesterday.
Perfect.
But there's a little button there, and I didn't know that button was there. And I was trying all this different stuff, and it just wasn't working. And yeah, it's it now is obvious to me, but it wasn't. But when I was doing it, so yeah, it was.
I've broken so many installs in that menu. It's so good. Oh.
Eris, you had something you want to say about like Fedora KDE would not finish loading or something along those lines?
So I think KDE on Fedora ships with Wayland. So I booted up the USB and tested the image, so it was fine. And once it loaded, you get that black screen on Plasma, you know, where it has the KDE logo and the little like circle thing. It just stopped right there. And it wouldn't go any further. I couldn't even drop down to TTY. So I had to do a save graphics install. I have NVIDIA. It's an old computer.
Is your Is your card still supported by Nouveau?
That I'm not sure.
That might be why.
So they,
I did so this sent me through a loop through a rabbit hole or whatever. So what I did is I did try booting Solus, and I had the same issue, but then I booted I installed Tumbleweed, and that worked fine.
Oh. Interesting.
point for Tumbleweed. There we go. Excellent.
Very interesting.
Anybody else have any other thoughts on the install process that you want to kick out there?
It's functional.
I think
like
I think it's a fine installer.
Yeah.
I think it just has some weirdness to it, which is fine. I mean, far be it for me to accuse another installer of being weird because I like Yast. So I mean, it can't I can't be throwing rocks in this glass house. So, all right. So as far as the default application selection, now this is to me not really a huge deal typically because like I can always install additional applications as long as they're easy to get done. But what were some thoughts you had there as far as the default applications?
Not much there, to be honest. It's pretty
Yeah,
much
it's
known
Spartan.
standard stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is okay. I don't mind that because then you can just install what you want to install, which is sometimes a good thing.
So, I know this is usually always brought up in Fedora conversations, but anything relating to like codecs and multimedia stuff, ye old RPM Fusion is probably going to be necessary. Yes.
Yep.
So,
and I like the fact that it's just an RPM you install, like you just install the RPM and it sets everything up for you. I'm like,
fun
well, holy
fact
cow.
for you: you don't even have to open up a terminal to install RPM Fusion. If you just
No.
open up the RPM, it'll install a GNOME software and it'll all be fine.
Wasn't that an option somewhere just to click that on? Was that during
Yes, but
setup?
I
Is that
think it's
setup?
in setup. Yeah, it's after the install, but before the other thing.
Yeah, it must have been during the setup then, I think, because that is because that used to be a very what can you say, in-depth process to work out how to get RPM Fusion running. But now it is the most simplest thing to do.
Just click a button.
Click a button.
Very nice.
Toggle it on.
Yep, pretty
Plug
nice.
it in, plug it in. However, I will say that while that is the case for RPM Fusion, or no, it's enable third-party repositories, but it doesn't enable all of RPM Fusion. It only enables a certain subset of them. And the same also goes for FlatHub.
Yes.
So if
I
you
was
want the
gonna bring
full
that up.
repositories, you'll have to actually go to both RPM Fusion and FlatHub and get them.
Right.
So I thought, and maybe I'm wrong sometimes I'm often wrong, but
Or actually, there is a Flatpak repository for Fedora, but it's all Fedora packages.
So you can add FlatHub with just a click in Discover to add the entire FlatHub repository. So
That's
it's just
beautiful.
Yep, and that's pretty
Oh.
standard fare in Plasma distributions. You can add FlatHub just usually a click away.
Well,
So
it's enabled in GNOME, but the problem is I still had to go to the FlatHub site and actually put that setup command in the terminal to get it to be recognized within the software, the GNOME software.
That's interesting.
Fun thing, if you ever install, like, let's say RPM Fusion and whatnot, and the apps that you would find in RPM Fusion, like OBS and all that, aren't showing in GNOME software, this is because it doesn't install the app stream data by default. So the command to do that would be DNF group update core, which would then install the app data for both RPM Fusion non-free and free. So GNOME software will populate with all of the apps and stuff that come from RPM Fusion, so they're not missing in GNOME software.
Right.
And I don't think it affects Flatpak. Flatpak just works once you install something from FlatHub, so, or you run the FlatHub command, the setup thing. But for RPM Fusion, you have to install those.
So
yeah,
Mike,
see, the thing is, sorry.
no, go ahead. No.
I was going to say, I installed something from FlatHub. No, sorry. I tried to search for stuff for FlatHub in the software, in the GNOME software, but nothing was showing up. So I did install something, and I think it either took a while to populate after install, but eventually I think they're now showing up, but they weren't showing up out of the box.
Yeah, it's not immediate.
Even after the setup command, it wasn't showing up.
Yeah,
So,
I had the same issue.
It takes a little moment.
And then
I
it
had
glitches. Sorry, Nate. It
No, you're fine.
glitches out. It glitches out as well a little bit when you install FlatHub stuff as well in the software. It says
Yeah.
it just closes, and then you go back and click install, and then it does something, and then it closes again. And at some point, it's installed. So I don't know what's going on.
Mine
It's-
didn't actually do that.
Yeah,
it's
mine did that a
weird.
couple of times.
It should not do that. This
Yeah.
seems undesirable.
So
Yeah, it was undesirable.
I tried to actually before that there was a Mike Platt in the chat. He said you can't enable RPM Fusion repos via the GNOME software settings. Pretty sure it was in there in Fedora 33 and 34. I don't know if that's
Yes.
true or not. So they
It
actually
was.
removed that. I wonder, probably legal. I'm sure like Red Hat legal said you can't have it. Probably. That's pretty typical. At least it is on the OpenSUSE side. SUSE legal takes all the fun that they can out of OpenSUSE if possible. But I did want to say so Kden Live is an application I use regularly on my system, so that's like the first thing I go for. I like Kden Live. And when I searched for it in GNOME software, even after RPM Fusion and forcing update of the app stream data, it wouldn't show up in GNOME software at all. And then I tried it, so that's actually why I installed the Plasma version, and I searched, did the same thing, as far as upstreaming, adding RPM Fusion and then updating the app stream data. Also, it did not show Kden Live. Although when I did search Kden Live, though, the first thing that popped up, and this made me laugh, was my OpenSUSE Breeze Dark color scheme. That was the first thing that popped up on Fedora, and so that made me laugh a lot. And I think I should install it just because that's what actually arrived.
That's
But,
hilarious.
Yeah, it is. I think it's funny.
I have noticed some weird quirks with searching for software lately. I typed in Geary and it showed me no applications found. But if I backspaced one character and just put Geary was there, and I was like, okay, I guess we don't need the Y. It's just gear now.
Yeah, I had the same type of issues where you would search for something and it wouldn't come up.
Yeah, it just wouldn't show up. But as soon as I started deleting the word, it showed up. It was like, wait, no, don't get rid of me. I'm here.
Just getting off subject a little bit with when it comes to the GNOME desktop, they've now made it so you can create all these categories if you drag one application on another and it creates a category and all that. That's all great. But what's with the when you look at the menu and you open the menu, nothing's in alphabetical order. It seems to be just like random everywhere.
It is just for fun.
Just for fun?
Yeah.
Those were fun.
No, yeah, there's no reason. It's just like that.
It's just
not
like somebody
alphabetical.
just went splat. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
your application splat.
I mean, at least now we can like drag them around. I think there's
Yeah.
also there's a G settings command, or I think you can also do it in Decomp Editor because that edits the same things. That'll reset the grid. But yeah, no, it won't alphabeticize or anything. It's just there. Hello.
I find that a little bit weird, to be honest, because the first thing people are going to do is go through the menu and in alphabetical order look for something that they want to open or whatever. But
I was kind of thinking that, but then I was looking at like almost every Android launcher I've seen is the same way. Like on my phone, it just does it based on like if I install something, it just puts it at the end of the list. And I think it's
Right.
basically just they're doing the same thing. It's like if there's stuff
Right.
here, just put it right after.
Just for fun.
Just for fun.
Just for fun. I
would-
made my OpenSUSE, my Fedora workstation, Fedora Plasma look like OpenSUSE
Did it
just
work?
for fun. Yeah.
That's great. I would hazard a guess that the alphabetical thing is probably because if you do alphabeticize it, then you have the problem where like if you have the app grid set up a certain way and you move stuff, if you like install apps and it moves places in there, it then shifts your app grid. So it's probably
Right.
like that. So the user can choose which apps they want where, but they don't get disturbed by new apps getting installed or old apps getting removed.
Right.
That's my guess. You know, I'm not a GNOME shell
Yeah, the
developer.
Android analogy, it seems reasonable.
I'm just making excuses if that's any consolation.
Yeah, you know, even like when you search stuff, I'm not sure what the prioritization like in Discover is for applications. Like I just wanted to search applications for something in accounting, and the first two things are own cloud K accounts and Nextcloud K accounts. Then after that, it's home bank. You would think that for accounting, it would bring accounting software.
Yeah.
Like it seems like you know, whatever. I mean, it's not a huge deal.
I
but
think they
just-
use the wrong definition of account.
Well, wouldn't you like prioritize applications over package additions, though? You know what I mean? Like,
Typically, yeah.
I know
I wa-
AppStream is still kind of a work in progress. I feel like.
Yeah. It's hard. AppStream is difficult. It's a lot to handle.
Was that in, where was that in, what was that in, Nate? Did you say that was?
I was playing with Discover on the Fedora Plasma.
Oh, that's Discover. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I noticed in Plasma sometimes, depending on if you're using the full screen application launcher or if you're using the menu with the super key, if sometimes I have trouble finding the KDE settings for KDE Connect. So I'll just quick type in KDE and every application that starts with KDE will come up. But depending on which KDE Connect application I pull up, because there's the one that'll start the service if it's not already, and then there's the one that'll bring up like the settings or whatever. There's actually 3 of them, which is odd and awkward. But whichever one I had accessed previously will be at the top of the list of those 3. So sometimes it'll confuse, like if I had the full screen up, it would abbreviate because of the big icons. It would just say KDE Con with a ... and I wouldn't know which one it was. So there'd be 3 of the same one.
Oh, they all have the same icon too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but if I go like I'm on Plasma on Garuda, it just brings up the little start menu style thing, and I can type in KDE, and it's got a wide enough thing. It'll show all of them. Yes, KDE Connect, KDE Connect, SMS, and then I think there was one more, but I don't see it here. But that's a little insight. Sometimes it's prioritization on what you've accessed previously.
That's very interesting.
Or what's popular, perhaps. Maybe that's also a factor. Like for the Discover or whatever, or the app centers.
Oh, you're talking about the app centers for installing things. I'm talking
That
about
too.
inside the system. So, okay.
Well, I'm sure they're both related. To some
Probably.
extent. Yeah. Well, I mean, typing in accounting, I found out there's a microblogging client, like for Twitter. So I didn't know that existed. Weird.
Very interesting.
It is. As far as the applications that you wanted to install, could you get the things that you wanted? Is there anything like?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there's anything like maybe you're looking for that you couldn't find. I just had the trouble with Kden Live, but that could be an AppStream issue.
So I have a question about FlatHub. That's not enabled, right? Automatically?
Correct.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so I had to make sure because I didn't see that at all. Like some of the applications.
There is a FlatHub or Flatpak repository enabled, but this is Fedora's own Flatpak repository. So also, fun fact, if you, let's say, have FlatHub installed, and you go to install Audacity, if you don't make sure you choose the flat hub version and you just choose the Fedora version, you'll still be missing all the fun codecs that you typically would use in Audacity. So it won't be able to export to the majority of formats. So it's important to pay attention to which Flatpak repo it's coming from. Yeah. Basically,
know.
we've just recreated the repo problem that we had before. It's great. It's a good time.
That is fun, I think.
Yeah.
Fun with a capital fun. I should check to see if there's snapd is available in the repos. I'm just curious now.
I think it is. There used to be a copper for it, but I think it's in there now.
It's not in the main OpenSUSE repositories. They have their own snapd repository. So interesting.
But so because I'm using Silverblue, a lot of the stuff that like typically in Fedora you would just be like, well, sudo dnf install this, that. You don't do that in Silverblue, and that's because the core operating system is like an image with like those packages that are all built together, and the point of it is that the base system and applications don't intermingle with each other, right? And the package manager doesn't try and like deal with dependencies between, let's say, Steam and your display manager. Not that that's ever happened. It's great because I didn't, my system didn't explode when installing anything, because installing normal apps did not touch anything important because they're all Flatpaks. And anything that's not a Flatpak can be run in Toolbox, which is basically a super tiny container that allows you to install and run all of the stuff in the Fedora repos like you normally would. So you type in Toolbox, it'll be like, would you like to create one? You click yes, and anytime I need things like Borg, or if I need things like FFmpeg command line tools and stuff like that, things that don't need to be part of the base OS. Like if you think about it, FFmpeg is not as important as your kernel or your display stack. So
maybe,
yeah, unless the whole system is just an FFmpeg machine, which does exist. So
it'd be more entertaining.
Yeah, it would be. Let's see if we can get FFmpeg running on this this Nintendo Switch. Just use it as a compiling machine.
Right.
Not a compiling machine, a encoding machine. I know words. But it's really cool. I think it's great. I'm excited to see more tools like this come to play. Like the only big downsides right now is that like with this kind of system, like one, if you're used to the traditional thing where like everything's in the main repo and you install it and it just, you know, installs with all your other packages, like it's going to take a little bit of time getting used to. But because you have access to all of the DNF stuff in Toolbox, like all of it's there. So, and even the NVIDIA drivers can be installed, but so far it's been good.
Maybe I missed it, but for Silverblue, if you are installing just like, if you want to install an RPM,
yes,
are there a lot of hoops you have to jump through just to be able to do that?
No, so that would be through Toolbox. And basically, like you would, if you just type Toolbox in a terminal, it'll just create it for you. And it's a small container where you can install all of the RPM packages from DNF. So it'll be like, Toolbox hasn't been set up. Would you like to set it up? You press Y and it'll be like, it's going to download 500 megs. Would you like to? Press Y. As soon as it's set up, it automatically enters it in the terminal. And if you type in sudo dnf install whatever you want, it'll install all of that just like it would on normal Fedora, but it's completely separate from your base operating system, so it won't break your stuff. It's super awesome, and it's still incredibly fast despite being in a container. It's great.
Well, I know that.
No,
go ahead.
Isn't this very similar to what we just did with NixOS? Doesn't it work roughly the same, or?
I'm not sure. I only really understand the packages in NixOS. I don't really understand like if there's container stuff set up. So I have no idea on that front.
I thought it was, but yeah,
So,
maybe I'm mistaken on that.
Toolbox runs on something called Podman and some other thing, which is like a super straightforward and clean like Docker alternative. I think it actually replaces Docker in Fedora. So there's that.
So
Yeah, and
I-
the Podman commands are actually the same as the Docker commands, as far as I remember. So all the standard Docker stuff you can do, I believe you can do in Podman the same way.
It's exciting. I like it.
I know that Adam has used Silverblue and has been pretty pumped about it in the past. I don't know if he is still using Silverblue at all, or
No.
no. Okay, so not that pumped about it, I guess.
No, the
But-
air got let out.
It happens. Run over a tire, or run over a nail. So I want to welcome. Is it Rafael? Rafael? How do I say your name?
It's actually Rafal, but I've
Rafal.
been called worse, so
Okay.
fine.
Well, excellent. Welcome. I think you're a new face. Maybe you've been
Thanks.
here before. I don't know if you have, but
No, so I'm actually Gordon on chat.
Oh, okay.
So- yeah,
Excellent.
I promise I will join. So finally, yeah.
Excellent. Well, glad you are. So I don't know how you get Gordonu out of Rafael, but whatever. I don't know where cubicle comes from out of name.
Sorry. Next time maybe.
Are you using Fedora now then?
Yes, so I was using Fedora Workstation before on this machine, but I took a challenge and installed Silverblue. And so far, so good. It's working. At least if you can hear me, it means that it is. So yeah.
Excellent. I know a lot of people use Fedora as their primary systems without serious issue. I don't think there's a perfect operating system out there besides OpenSUSE, but the
wish.
yeah, but because everything's going to have its hiccups and issues and whatnot.
Yep.
So as far as general user experience, what would you say about Fedora? Like, would you say you enjoyed your time on it? If it's a temporary stay, are you staying on Fedora? If that's your regular thing,
I enjoy it, but it's so boring because everything is working. So I need a challenge,
Well, there's always Arch or Linux from scratch. If you need a challenge,
I
you
do
can
use
always.
Arch on my laptop, so if I
Well, there you go.
need to living on Edge, then I switch to my laptop and do some stuff.
Yep. You need to live on a prayer. You can always run Arch in a laptop with Brent.
Exactly.
Hey, I'm running Arch on a laptop, but it's Garuda, so it's fit.
No one needs to break into any Bon Jovi for living on a prayer. Just so you know, it's okay. So there was a Telegram poll, and 30% said that their time with Fedora has been going great. 20% said it's going okay. 2 votes for not so great. So 10% for not so great, a lot of issues. 5% was not interested in the distro, so they will skip. 15% said they don't have time this week. 5% said I'm not interested in doing any of the distro challenges. And that's fair. Or explorations, I'm sorry. And 14% said other. So I don't know what those others were, but anyway, so it's interesting. I think overall, if you look at that, it's at least half of people said it's going okay or great, and I think that's probably pretty typical with any Linux distribution, really. Although I was not really a fan of NixOS so much, I was a little frustrated with it and the installation process, but I understand its purpose. Not for me.
I feel bad that I missed that week too, because I was like so excited for it when we were choosing it. I was like, yeah, guys, let's do NixOS. And then I just didn't show up. I was just like,
That's
then
okay
you
every
ghosted.
time. That's okay. Every time Ubuntu Studio comes up, I ghost it too. So
Yeah.
you're our one inside connection.
I'm trying.
That's all right. I ghosted on NixOS too. I decided I really didn't want to go there.
Yeah. That's okay. I mean, I don't expect people to do everything. I'm just happy I can get through the installation process on them, you know, and then maybe play around a little bit. That's what I call them explorations. If I said challenge, I'd be failing the challenge every time. So it's just, you know, to kind of play around with it. You know, it's like when you go to a dealership and you get a new car, you take it around the block. It's kind of like that, basically. So areas that you found difficult, I want to kind of go into that. So Shickle, you said in Silverblue, you had some Firefox issues.
Oh yeah. So an interesting thing about because I know I explained earlier where like the point of Silverblue is that like you have an immutable base OS, and all of that stuff is like a separate image from the apps you install on top. The default browser is installed as part of the base operating system rather than just being a Flatpak on top of it. And the reason this doesn't make sense is because one, if a user wants to switch their browser, that shouldn't impact like their core operating system. It should just be something they can uninstall and switch something else to. It's not a critical component. You can still install and remove software without a web browser. But also because removing it requires making changes to your base OS, which is like generally you want to do as little of that as possible to reduce the amount of breakage. But so I wouldn't say it's like it's not like broken, but it's definitely like a perhaps an oversight considering the design principles of a system like Silverblue.
So
Yeah,
it's kind of like
that's
it's
a really
kind of
weird
like
choice.
yeah,
Go
but
on.
it's kind of like you know, when you buy an Android phone, you always have Chrome installed by default, and you can't get rid
Yeah.
of it. It's kind of like that.
That's true. They're trying to convince me to stay with the Fox.
Right.
But you'd think they'd have that installed as a toolbox, like you were talking about, rather than part of the
Or a
base
Flatpak.
system.
I would say Flatpak typically Toolbox I think is reserved for things that like the user sets up in like its own environment. So whereas Flatpak would just be like an installed app that is normally there.
What, outside the base system or on the
On top of it. So it's separate, but it's like all the other
Okay.
Flatpaks on top of it. But with I'm guessing the only reason they don't do that is because I know Firefox is an official Flatpak, but it's in FlatHub. My guess is that they maybe don't have a Firefox build in Fedora's own Flatpak repository, but I haven't actually checked it. I could literally, I'm on it right now. I could just do that, but whatever. I'll just guess blindly.
Yeah, they don't.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but basically the reason is, I mean, the idea is that you shouldn't touch your root system, and the user, like normal applications, should be installed from Flatpak. But all the development stuff that, for example, I don't know, the libraries or anything, basically like command line utilities should be installed in Toolbox, which leads sometimes to some quirks, but yeah.
I guess maybe there's issues with running it as a Flatpak. I know that there's some issues with snaps because like some user settings, I guess, or like extensions or something didn't work 100% right. So maybe they don't have it worked out yet with the Flatpak either. I don't know. I'm spitballing here, just kind of throwing it out there. I could be way off.
Neither's quite perfect, but it looks like they do have a build. So maybe it might be coming in the next version of Silverblue. That could be cool.
So something interesting you said, Shickle, they've got their own Flatpak repository. I don't understand why they would do that. Why don't they just go with normal Flatpak? What's the reason for having their own repository?
I would hazard a guess that's because FlatHub is not only a third-party repository, but it also contains a lot of the like the non-free software and stuff that Fedora themselves can't ship.
Oh, right.
Whereas like all of the stuff that they would build and ship in their own repository follows the same principles that Fedora's normal software packages would have in the RPM repos. What do they call their repos? Was it just RPM repos? I don't know. There's probably a name for it.
It's RPM.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm sure it's RPM. Yeah.
It's been a while. I've stopped looking at file extensions and I've just been blindly clicking on stuff.
That's totally safe. I wouldn't worry about that at all. Totally good. Now, Aris, you said you had some issues as well, as far as a Fedora KDE.
So Fedora KDE, after I did the safe graphics install, it had it the no mode set to grub. So I just had to make sure to take that off myself because that's how the system was installed. And then I used it, and once it if it went to sleep, I couldn't log in again. The login screen was just frozen. It wouldn't show like all the buttons. And I was able to drop the TTY then though, and then I rebooted. I installed Fedora GNOME, and that installed fine. I didn't have any issues as far as I think suspending either. But I did have I did suspend with Firefox open, and it's just stopped working. The UI was not responsive at all, and I closed it and I opened it again. It didn't work. I rebooted a Fedora and it didn't work again. And I installed Chromium, and I think I tried opening some links, and it tried opening them, but it wouldn't finish loading. All this happened after I did all the updates for Fedora.
Wow.
It's interesting. I wonder, did a reset not kind of did you turn it off and turn it back on again? For the,
yeah, I rebooted it and it still Firefox doesn't work anymore. I don't know what happened to it.
But how many times?
Yeah, so I don't know what happened to it. And Chromium didn't work. It was like the same thing. Maybe it worked a little bit better. It kind of like loaded, but it didn't finish loading. So I don't know what happened exactly.
Yeah, well, that's kind of bizarre. I wonder if it has to do with your NVIDIA. If like somehow like the NVIDIA GPU made things crazy somehow.
I don't know. I'm not even sure if I tried going to Xor because I was using Wayland, but it was working before I updated. It was working fine. I could use Firefox. I think I went in there to look for things, and it worked fine.
I think it's a known issue. I saw it somewhere on the bug tracker. I think if you disable hardware acceleration, it might be fine in Chromium or Firefox.
So it's hardware acceleration with NVIDIA? Is that the issue? Some sort of an issue there?
Yeah. I'm trying to find it. I don't use either Firefox or Chromium, so
of course not.
No, I just like to, keep myself on my toes and be weird.
I haven't had that issue on Ubuntu because I'm on Ubuntu. That's never been an issue for me, and I think I have acceleration enabled on that, and it wasn't an issue for me on Tumbleweed. So I have no idea why that happened.
Yeah, I'm saying it's like a bug on Fedora.
It's on Fedora side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the actual bug report because I ran into this when I was getting the proprietary NVIDIA drivers working with Wayland, but it does also occur on Nouveau sometimes. I'll put a link in the chat.
Thanks.
So the KDE desktop, that's not one of their flagship. Is GNOME the only flagship they have, or?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to go to like a different section for the KDE one. I mean, the GNOME one is right in front.
It's a spin. Yeah. Although I will say it's the Plasma spin is it's very popular. It's liked by a lot of people, and it's what I hear a large number using. So I know there's a lot of effort being put into it. So
yeah, something that's I know it was mentioned earlier that Fedora KDE is using Wayland now by default, and that's something that very few distributions that ship KDE are doing, and that's a really important thing. I know using Wayland can sometimes be difficult, especially like early on. But that's something that's going to be very necessary for getting KDE on Wayland polished up and working right. So it's like they're really putting effort into trying to push all of that forward. So that's really good to see.
Well, I mean, Fedora is always on leading edge. They're always experimenting and doing and trying different things. So that's actually one of the things I like about Fedora. They're not afraid to try new things, new technologies.
That's what the F stands for. It's like
Fast. Fantastic.
Freedom, friends first, and family. No, I don't know what the last one is.
And fish shell, the fish shell.
Fish shell. Yes, fish
Yep.
is great.
I love fish. It's my go-to. Did anybody else have any difficulties? I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody.
Well, I started Fedora with KDE, and I'm kind of a strange duck. And so I switched out the menu to the more simple menu. You've got 3 choices. They usually have the middle one set. I set up the bottom one. Didn't realize that it goes directly to Wayland. And if you take the bottom choice, which is to log out, power off, whatever, the menu that comes up along the side, the power off portion is actually hidden behind the taskbar in Wayland. You go back to the Xorg version, it's fine. So that's an issue they're going to have to work out. It's a Wayland issue.
That's nice to know.
Other than that, KDE seemed to be just fine. I didn't have a whole lot of problems with it. And
then I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you if that's the desktop that you use on your regular Linux system.
No, I used BSPWM, but I used KDE for a long time before that.
Oh, okay.
So KDE is my default when I go into a DE, okay? But my preference is BSPWM, a window manager these days. However, because I'm familiar with KDE, that's where I go to if I need something along those lines.
Gotcha. Good to know. And I didn't even know. I've never even seen this window manager before. Could you put it in the chat so I can look it up later? Because I just want to look it up, play with it. Anybody else have any other issues or areas you found difficult, I should say, about with Fedora they want to throw out there? Or if you want to throw anything else, if you want to kick it in there, feel free to chat away.
Well, I definitely have to say, when I first booted it up, it had 1.6 gigabytes of updates and it crashed. It completely stopped responding. So I forced it to reboot and it rebooted, and I think it rebooted 3 times with updates after that. I got it working. Every time I would go into Firefox, because now I know exactly how to do it. If you have 2 tabs open and drag one tab to the other screen and hold it there, the screen goes black and the whole desktop crashes.
Wayland.
Oh.
That's
it just goes
Wayland,
completely dead. This thing gave me nothing but troubles from every step of the way. I really was unfortunately disappointed. I just downloaded it. Why would it have 1.6 gigabytes of updates? I still don't know. You're just asking for troubles, but I don't understand why.
A couple of things.
Okay.
One is because the ISOs were built before all of those updates, and those ISOs will stay the same. So any updates and fixes and patches for the first I don't know, right after a release, there's typically a lot of updates to a lot of things, because that's everybody starts using it, stuff starts breaking, people start fixing stuff. All of that'll happen pretty quick. So even if it's only a week after it's been released, you're going to see a lot of updates, because the ISO itself doesn't have those pre-installed because it was already built. But also with the Firefox thing, if you still have the system installed, there is something that I think would address it. And it's a Qt thing that you would put in your environment file that would basically allow it to do that without exploding. It doesn't always work, but it might do the trick.
Okay.
I'll go grab that.
Oh, thanks.
I'm not a fan of the restart and update either. Is that standard in Fedora, or is that just when there's a kernel? Standard, is it?
Yes. So the principle is that, like mentioned earlier with your core system packages, if you're modifying the actual installation of all of your packages, that will change things. Restarting after installing stuff that way basically ensures that any services associated with it or any configs that have been changed get reloaded and applied properly upon reboot. You
Right.
can install and remove stuff without doing this and update without doing this if you do it in a terminal. So if
Right.
there's like a flag that lets you like upgrade without restarting.
Right.
Basically just make sure that like changes to your running system don't happen without things being properly restarted and shut down, and because otherwise, you know, you start, let's say you are using your browser and you update it and things that the browser relies on have been changed, and eventually you start opening web pages and they don't render properly or it crashes everything, and a lot of bad things can happen. So that's just to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, there's just a myth within Linux that, you know, one of the best things about Linux was you can update without restarting. But,
Yeah.
That's been a thing for a long time. But now I've noticed that a lot of people are starting to do this restart and update. It just gives me the Windows 10 shivers.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. You know, it's like you technically could, and you could restart those services manually, but it's generally just not good practice to do that for everything.
Fair enough.
It's
Don't get
don't
me
have
started
good-
on having to restart services in the audio stack.
Oh no.
I don't find it to be an issue, to be honest, because for me, it's the Fedora starts in like 7-10 seconds. So
Yeah, it's pretty quick here.
For what it's worth, I tried installing updates on KDE Fedora a couple of times, but it never actually finished the process. So I don't know what the deal is there, but maybe it's my system. I don't know.
Was that Discover or Terminal?
Discover. I don't know. I should probably try in terminal later.
So
But,
so Discover didn't actually prompt you to restart an update, or just
it did.
the updates?
It just didn't do it.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
It's kind of like that episode of Seinfeld, but I made a reservation for the car, so you should have the car. You know. So I did my part. You didn't do your part. Anyway, kind of like that. Anything else as far as people want to kick out there? Is there any areas you found difficult, or maybe just other thoughts?
I've just straight up, I've switched to it as my primary Linux OS.
Oh, cool.
Silverblue.
So Silverblue.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Same.
It's pretty snazzy.
That's pretty cool.
I haven't switched, but it is certainly a backup for me. I'm impressed. And I used to be Mr. Anti-Fedora, but it's got me pretty well hooked.
The hats have tipped in the other direction.
At least for the moment, Chico, at least for the moment.
Fingers
We'll
crossed.
Is that a red hat? Is that a red hat?
Or a blue one. Or green, maybe? Like an Indiana Jones hat, you know, that... He didn't have a fedora, though, I guess. It wasn't a fedora. But
Close enough.
I like blue. Blue's good.
Blue's good. Well, Steve's very own, he sent me a message. He says he would not be attending Biddle tonight. He's out, you know, doing family stuff with the in-laws, so I guess whatever. Family's more important. He says he did do a system upgrade in Fedora Plasma 34 to 35. It was quick and smooth with no issues that he could tell. He says he has NVIDIA on his desktop, and Wayland didn't work well. He says they thought there were supposed to be improvements with Wayland and NVIDIA, but he guesses not. So, it's a work in progress. A whip, I guess.
A whip.
And Eris, you said you had some thoughts too.
Oh, since I was trying to see if this was like a plasma thing that I was having issues with, I did try installing Tumbleweed and it worked. But I couldn't get the grub to add Fedora from Tumbleweed, or the other way around, or have Fedora add Tumbleweed or Tumbleweed add Fedora. I think it used to work before, but it doesn't work anymore. I don't know if that changed.
I wonder if it has something to do with the way Tumbleweed kind of takes over the grub with the snapshots and everything.
Yeah, I'm
If
not
it's
sure.
maybe just
But
difficult.
it doesn't show the other one anymore.
not playing nice together, I guess.
Actually, that was another question I was going to ask. Because it's got ButterFS by default, would it, is that just, sometimes people have Snapper or something installed so you can do backups, but, or is it just ButterFS? They just decided to go default with that.
It's default in OpenSUSE, the Snapper, and it has like different like versions. So that way, if you have like a problem, you can go back.
So
Yeah.
one of the so right now, the only BTRFS specific thing that Fedora is shipping is actually the transparent compression. So ZSTD compression is set enabled on the root file system. I think it's level 1 by default, so it's pretty minimal. Doesn't cost very much, but will save you a little bit of disk space. But in the future, there are a couple of open tickets at looking into implementing a snapshotting feature as well. So Snapper is a utility for BTRFS to create snapshots and stuff like that, but it's not an actual feature of BTRFS. So like BTRFS has snapshots and all that. Snapper is like an automation tool and configuration tool for those snapshots.
So does Fedora out of the box, does it do snapshots or it doesn't? It probably doesn't. No, okay. No.
Snapper is in the repos though for Fedora. I don't know if it works.
It does have a separate home volume. I say separate, it's a sub volume. So you have your root volume and then you have your home sub volume. So they are also, you can move that out if you wanted to, let's say, reinstall. You could actually retain that home sub volume and just reinstall the root file system. So that's a pretty cool default. And it also means that you don't have to have separate partitions for home and root, which are like rigid and require you to physically move the data around. It's pretty cool stuff.
Right. Okay.
Do you actually need snapshots with Silverblue? You can roll back, right?
You do, yes. So one of the big benefits of like, let's say like the RPM OS tree snapshots is that lets you roll back your system configuration, but user data isn't part of that. So I guess I think by default OpenSUSE does the whole thing, right? It's you can roll back the system and home separately.
I don't think they do home.
Oh, okay.
So
I know someone does it. I just don't know who. It might be Garuda that I'm thinking of.
The issue with home is that because file changes are happening so often,
it's a lot of snapshots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what's recommended is you take snapshots periodically, and then you can do like a ButterFS send to something else. That's I think the recommendation. Yeah. So daily or whatever, but I don't know how to do that though. I know it's a doable thing. I just don't know how it's done. So
it's a bit weird.
Well, maybe someone should write a tutorial on that when they figure it out. So, does anybody else have anything else they want to say about Fedora before we move on to like what we're gonna do next week?
I would like them to fix the store. And flickering.
It could use some work.
Yeah.
What's the audio stack on there? Are they using Pipewire yet? Or are they still in Pulse?
Yes.
Pipewire by default.
They converted, I think, last release. Not even this one's the last one. They switched over.
I run Pipewire in one machine with Tumbleweed, but not on all of them.
So a fun experience for me has been that because I don't know if you guys know, but this like the majority of this year I haven't been on Linux until like more recently. So I hadn't actually experienced the new GNOME stuff or like a lot of the new Fedora stuff that even happened in the last release. So I was still very familiar with like GNOME's previous workspaces and all that. So the first time I jumped into a distro that had that was the Fedora 35 beta. And personally, I love it. Like I'm a huge fan. I didn't know how I would like it because I hadn't tried it, but now that I'm using it, it's amazing. But after like a year of not using Linux and then like that much drastic change to like, you know, like now it's on Pipewire. Now your workspaces are horizontal and they're organized differently and folders work differently. And your, oh, GNOME settings has like a lot of the stuff that was in GNOME tweaks are now in GNOME settings and they're set up really nicely. Like you can turn the hot corner on and off in GNOME settings and all kinds of cool stuff like that. Yeah, it's a lot of really good things happening all at once for me right now. I'm like, this is great. like a kid in a candy store. It's a good time.
I
All
didn't
they
see a
need
way.
to do now, all they need to do now is move the top panel down the bottom.
Oh yeah.
That
Okay.
would complement that whole, because it seems to be like, I know it's all new and everything, but I mean, you know, you click the activities, you got to go down to your icons. It'd be, I think I heard that they were going to change it. Maybe.
You can press the home key to.
I didn't actually think about that.
Yes, you can press the super key. That's right.
Super key,
You
that's what I
can
meant.
do that. Yeah.
Well, so I like to end every exploration with a why should you give Fedora a spin? I think Shikla's got a lot of reasons why. But if anyone wants to throw something out there as to why they think you should try Fedora, why somebody out there, like the high selling points, give Fedora a spin because your elevator pitch, as it were.
Because you can.
Because your machine needs hose and you might as well try something new before you nuke and pave and go back to something you know. That's how I ended up on Garuda. I was like, I needed to nuke and pave and do something. Oh, now I'm still here a month later.
Well, there you go.
They trapped you.
I think for someone who's been around Linux for a little while, trying Fedora might be a good idea. I'm not so sure the install for Fedora is really geared towards a new Linux user, but for somebody who's been around Linux for a little while, I think it's just a smart move. It might be just the thing they're looking for.
Kind of change it up a little bit.
Why not?
Why not? So for me, I would say that where I see Fedora's got some high marks is they're always testing out new technology. They got the latest Plasma. They have the latest GNOME. They've pretty much ironed out a lot of the issues with them prior to kicking them out. They test the new tech. They try out the new technologies. You know, they're pushing Wayland. So if you want to see how those things work, you know, out of the box, you know, for you, they have a lot of spins. So you can. It's a grab an ISO and go. Honestly, I really like the DNF tool in Terminal. I don't know if we're supposed to promote terminal tools, but I love the DNF tool in the terminal because it's just really nice how it's laid out. I like, you know, it's how it gives the information to you when doing updates or installs. It's very readable. It's not just a wall of text. I think their implementation of Plasma is pretty good. It's not my favorite. I personally prefer the Tumbleweed one because one little thing that they do in Tumbleweed, it's easy to fix, but updates tend to break it. It's that it uses the Plasma file dialog when you open up something, and it doesn't seem to work the same in any other Plasma distribution. And I'm not sure why it's not a default behavior. I do not know.
That is an important component.
Because
that would be nice to see.
Because I really dislike whatever file. I don't know if it's the GNOME file dialog system or whatever it is, but I don't like it. So it's jarring. You know, when you're using Firefox all the time, you get that dialog instead of the proper Plasma dialog. It annoys me. So it's a little thing, a little irritation. But I think that they're probably my third. Well, I don't know if Fedora versus Kubuntu, I kind of put them on neck and neck as far as the Plasma experience. I think they're pretty good. But I just happen to prefer how OpenSUSE does it. I think it's just a little bit better because of that one little thing.
So Nate, you said that you like DNF. I've heard talk that maybe OpenSUSE would switch over to DNF. Would you support that?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. So there isn't talk of that, and what is I guess the back end piece of it, the solving portion of it, DNF does it more efficiently than Zipper at this point. So rather than rework the plumbing, I think all the commands and everything else would be the same on top. I don't know if they've really figured it out yet, but the idea was that the library that does the solving DNF used that portion of DNF in Zipper instead. That's my understanding, but I could be wrong. So
I can't imagine a world with Nate without Zipper.
I've given up lots of other things, like Coca-Cola.
But zippers, they play such an important role in our lives. I mean, what are you going to use, buttons instead of zippers?
This is true. Velcro. From zipper to Velcro. Sure, it wears out after some time, but it makes a really cool sound.
Velcro just attracts everything.
I should make a package manager called Velcro that just slowly falls apart over time.
That's a great idea.
I love that.
Velcro is actually space technology.
It is.
That's a good point. Oh, but
that's why it works great in space where there's no dogs and cat hair to get into
it. In a clean room that is floating above the earth.
Right.
Don't know how clean that remains when human beings have been in it for a week or two.
Not very clean.
I don't want to think about it, actually. That's what colostomy bags are for. Well, there we go. All right. Any other selling points you think of Fedora you want to kick out there?
It's a cool hat.
It's a cool hat.
It is a cool hat.
I have heard people say that if you want to see where the Linux desktop is going to be in 2 years, maybe 1.5 years, you can try Fedora, and then the other distros will follow.
That's probably pretty accurate.
It's not too far off.
I mean, you're going to say Silverblue. I thought you were going to say Silverblue then. I thought that's where everyone was heading, was this system separate from packages and things. I thought.
Well, now that we've
it's in 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. The concept is all there. We just got to get people on board.
It's like getting a car that doesn't have all the bells and whistles fully worked out yet. So it may have an infotainment system, but sometimes it just won't connect to your phone or something like that.
Have you been reading my long rants about car manufacturing in the Linux for Everyone group?
I have not.
I literally just wrote about that this morning.
After show, we'll talk about that.
That's amazing. It's great timing.
Yeah. So I guess that for next week, perhaps another distro challenge or exploration. I keep saying challenge. Exploration. Or possibly, it was kind of inspired by Donald here, maybe doing some like a window manager exploration. Can you use a window manager as a for your desktop? That might be a dangerous one to do because it could screw up your system, I suppose. But what are some thoughts on that?
That's like Linus taking on Linux as a first-time user and all of his responses. Window managers are a lot of work to configure when you first get into them and are a real headache. So unless you've got a lot of time to put into it, a week would probably not be enough time to pull that off for most people.
That could be.
You need to find a good configuration for whatever you're using to start with that. Arco Linux has a really good Qtile by default. I know DistroTube has some his configs out there. So yeah, you'd probably want to start with somebody's configuration to do that. Yeah.
I've come up with the theory that the reason that most window managers have really crazy, unreasonable default configs is because a lot of them are like older than all of the stuff we use now on desktops for like moving windows around and switching workspaces. So they're using like before all of this is like visualized in a DE. It's just like these keys made sense in 1998, but Maybe not so much now.
I think you're
Right.
right. The other thing is maybe what we should be doing is taking a look at Arco Linux D and with all of its varieties, because they have a ton of window managers out there. They're already configured. And so pick one and go play with it. That might be an idea.
Which Linux is that?
Arco Linux D.
Arca Linux D.
They've got the majority of window managers. If you want to go the window manager route.
So Arco
And-
Linux, just is there a difference between Arco Linux and Arco Linux D? Are those two different things, or is that a?
Yeah, there's different lots, and definitely Eric Dubois will have a video about anything you want to know. He's got tons of them.
He's
Yeah,
prolific.
he has well over 1,000 tutorials.
Arco
Yeah.
Linux D will give you an ISO that is specific to the window manager you want. If you go into Arco Linux itself, there's 1,000 different directions you can go. That's why I was specifying D. It seems just to be
Yeah.
easier if you just want to explore a window manager.
Well, I'm game for that. If somebody else will back me up on that, like second
That
that
sounds
motion.
cool.
All right.
I'll
Like
second
that
that.
song.
I'll
It's
second that
all right.
motion.
It's
All in favor, aye.
ARCO. Well, see,
So
the
here's the-
ARCO Linux D.
.com because I found the
Dot-
website.
Yeah.
Here's the other thought too, and maybe this would be a little. Maybe this curve would be a little more difficult, but I'm gonna throw it out in case someone thinks it might be a thing. Every time I would install something on my Raspberry Pi, and I would want to run just one application as like just this is a purpose-built piece of hardware, I would take an Ubuntu based or some other thing that's just a bare bones where it comes up with a terminal, and then I would install, just I think it's like X11 or whatever, and just like basically whatever package it needed to do like OpenBox or Fluxbox. So I had something that would display the application. I don't know if that's too much to just be like, hey, we'll do that and then install on top of that. But if this here has all of the different ones as a pre-done ISO, that might be easier.
Yeah, what you're suggesting is great for people who have done window managers before, have their own configs, know how to get around them. That's great. But most of the people here, I don't think have even explored them yet.
So I'm exploring the Arco Linux D website. If I click any desktop, what is this? How do we do? The website's kind of odd layout here. Okay, because they have Arco Linux L, S, D, B. Are these the different desktop or window managers?
No, they're different versions of Arco Linux for different purposes. You want to go into D and then take a look at their downloads, and they're going to offer you ISOs for all the different window managers, and it's in the name of the ISO.
Okay, because I see on their website they have phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
That
6,
is
7.
that
and
is if
that's-
you want to learn how to do all of this their way, going through all their steps. You don't have to go through all of that.
Okay, so which?
Take a look at this URL that Raffle put into our chat.
Okay.
VFTP.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I see
might-
the
that-
ISO. I just wonder which one, like, which of these, what does
Oh.
the letter
Yeah.
at the end of it stand for? Like which desktop environment or
You
window?
can ask them. I don't know. It's not. It had all I found out was when I went into Arco Linux. Give me a minute. Let me go into here and see if I can find the right place. I'll put up a link for you. Okay.
All right. So that the link that Rafael gave, I also put it in the YouTube chat. So that's looks like it has all the window managers.
Yeah, if you just search like Qtile, you'll find the ones with Qtile on them. If you
Yep.
search for
That's
Cinnamon,
That's what I'm interested in trying. Now, are these set up? Already have some default setup set, so I can kind of
Yeah.
walk you through it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't.
That's
I
the
get what
purpose
it
of them.
is. It's each display. It's 4 display managers: Light DM, SSDM, GDM, and LXDM. I believe that's what it looks like.
I'm not sure on those particular ISOs, Nate. I do have a box that's running a few Docker containers that I have Qtile from Arco Linux installed on, and it the setup for it is pretty solid.
Oh,
Okay.
I see. Arco Linux B Plasma. There's a lot of ISOs on here.
Oh yeah. Just think of all the build time for those.
That's
I
almost,
have no idea how they support as many as they do, but
I don't know if anyone's got enough neck for that much beard to do all this.
It's
Maybe
impressive.
they don't support them. They just build them.
it's a variety of beards that do the work. It's a distributed beard system.
System.
Like everyone just sits in a circle and all it's like 18,000 guys with one big beard amongst them all.
Kind of like a rat
I
king,
love
you
that.
know, when they get all tangled around each other. All right, cool. So if anyone has any objection to doing maybe something like this, an Arco Linux window manager, or if you do something else, there's really no pressure. There's no, I mean, we can just make more of an Arco Linux. Give it a try.
This has a lot of options.
Right.
Let's see.
Are we good with that? So can we make that an official?
Sounds good to me.
All right, cool. Let's make it official. All right, so we're running really close to being out of time. So I wanted to bring up the Pipewire conversation that was also started before. And if we got in a few minutes, we can probably talk about that.
Yeah. When I said I hate Pipewire, it's not Pipewire. It's me. It's like, it's not you, babe. It's me. Okay, so I don't understand all of the options that are available. I know they're there. I'm having the same experience now with Pipewire that I did with Jack and Pulse, because they've taken all of the infrastructure of Jack and Pulse and re-implemented it into one little, like, it's like, okay, guys, we're gonna all of that distributed stuff, we're trying to bring it under one house. And which is cool because you can take Jack enabled clients and run them using pw-jack and then space whatever that program is, say Carla, which is your patch bay. And it's neat. And then it shows all the things that are in there that you would see inside of your audio options. If you go into configure and all of your audio devices show up. The unfortunate thing is there's not an easy access to the back end where you can change your sample rates and your latent, all the things that make the latency come down to where it's usable on a level of, like, the reason Jack is so cool is because you can do everything in the box. Like, I route my microphone back to my headphones through the computer. And so for most people, that you end up with the latency, the time it takes from the microphone to your headphones to hear yourself, and it's delayed so much that it's unusable. But in my experience now under Garuda, on a side note, I know on a Arch-based system, the kernel, the way they have it set up, runs so nice when I got Jack installed. So like I said at one time before, Garuda is really nice for just click, click, click. I can uninstall the Pipewire stuff and then just go also Pulse Jack real time. And then I'll reboot just to make sure everything is cool. But when there was recently a little bit of an update kerfuffle in the audio stack with Pipewire and Garuda, but to their credit, they are really good about any manual intervention that you might need to do. Their update system will give you a little blurb on your desktop, like, hey, manual intervention is needed. It'll give you a link. You go right into their forum and you can read the stuff on it. And then if you need, then everybody's together to kind of suss that out. The issue I'm having now, though, is there's a conflict the way they have set up their system, I have to kill the pipe wire process or system service sometimes if I have the pulse jack stuff running, because it's easier for me to just go pulse jack and ALSA and have the one click checkboxes. But now, because of however Pipewire and all of those other things in their audio configs have to jive, it don't. And they fight now, which was my problem I used to have when it was just getting jack running with pulse. And I sussed all that out and figured that out. But now it's the same thing in Pipewire. But I do like what they're doing, the way they're bringing all this stuff together, where they're not putting you out to pasture with all of your old stuff. You're able to run that PW-jack space, whatever your jack enabled client is, and it will just, it'll plug everything in. It'll show all the back end. So it's doing some really cool things. The problem is they don't have an app like Cadence where you can just pull that up and you can go in and you can set all of your audio settings for whatever specific audio interface you need to run jack with. Because I don't use jack to run all my internal onboard audio. I use it for my interface and my microphone. And then I just use the pulse audio bridges between. Think of it like a triangle. You got ALSA on the bottom and you've got pulse and jack on the over here. And then there's bridges between. That's kind of how it's set up. You know, ALSA passes through all of your hardware, and then I leave all of the system stuff like my browser and Zoom and everything that's just like sits there. That pulse automatically, they already know what pulse is. So like Discord and all that is over here. And then jack is over here, managing all of the real-time stuff from my hardware. And then that makes it nice and easy for me to hear myself. And then, yeah, so that's kind of how I have that set up. But that triangle is now broken with Pipewire because I can't easily access the backend. And now I have to dig into the config files and things for it. So I'm back to that old place where that problem used to be when it was such a mystery to figure out how to get jack to work with pulse applications. So it's there. They just haven't put that extra piece in yet to complete the triangle.
You can still disable Pipewire though, right?
I can. And I
Okay.
could just add in my little jack script if I want to, just say, system control.
They're working
that
on
stuff.
the access to that, like with an actual like settings thing. It's just not there yet.
Yeah.
So
It'll get there.
I think the other problem kind of running into it right now, and this is something I found out recently in the past like couple of days when I was just trying to, so ultimately like on my Linux machine with Pipewire right now, the microphone still won't work for my USB interface. And I think it's something to do with some updates that happened at some point. And I've looked at it. I've tried to attack it from the Pipewire side. I've tried uninstalling Pipewire and going back to just a Pulse ALSA setup. And so what I found out is like Pipewire is actually required for certain things now. Like certain things, it is a dependency. So even if you do want to run jack and Pulse, you're going to have Pipewire running for certain things. And that I think is going to be the interesting thing. The other thing that I would say, or there's two other things. One, the other cool thing about running Pipewire is not only do your jack aware apps get populated in your Carla mixer or your Carla patch bay, your other apps that aren't jack aware will get populated in there. So if you had apps previously that didn't work with jack, you can actually include them now. But the final thing I would say is, can you not run PW jack Cadence?
I have not tried that. That would be an interesting thing but the thing about Cadence is it accesses the jack service directly. So
but Pipewire, I've tried it. I mean, I don't know nearly as much about it as you do, but I have gotten Carla, or I believe I have gotten Cadence pulled up like that.
I will have to try that after all of us we're
So
done.
I
'cause
think
I'm on my system.
the core problem there though is that doesn't change the like sample rates and stuff for Pipewire. That's the problem.
There are configs if you go to the wiki on it on Pipewire under jack. It tells you where all the config files are, and you just have to uncomment and CP or move a bunch of stuff around, and it's gonna be one of those, power user go in and suss all that out if you really want to do it now.
Yeah.
But I think in the short term, I'm not gonna try to like strip Pipewire out of the system, because like you said, it's built in. I went into Pac-Man and tried to suss it out and say, all right, I'm booting Jack right out the back door, and not Jack, but Pipewire. When you do it, it says, do you also want to uninstall these other 100-something packages along with it? And it's like the system. It's like, no, I'm not uninstalling my whole system. It's crazy. Stuff
wait
you
till
never
you see
thought was
what,
connected.
Wait till you see what happens when you install Steam.
Oh yeah.
Yes, are you gonna pull the Linus check tips?
I had to.
Going back to Pipewire being a dependency, I think GNOME requires Pipewire now.
Yes.
Well, I'm talking about KDE version of Manjaro, and I mean that even requires Pipewire for various things at this point.
I'm glad to see it though, by the way, because in the past we've been way too reluctant to force new technologies to actually be used by applications and system stuff. So the fact that they're not really giving application developers an option to just pretend it doesn't exist is pretty nice.
Well,
It
I
is.
mean, to be fair though, like with the way Pipewire ties into Jack and Pulse and all that, I mean, application developers a lot of times don't.
They
have
shouldn't.
to
They shouldn't
care.
have to. Yeah, they shouldn't be screwing.
But
with that
it's
stuff.
not that Pipewire ties into Jack and Pulse. It re-implements them under its own. It uses like it's weird. It's not like, because I can install the Pulse and the Jack stuff, and they're totally separate. Earlier, I had Pipewire going, and I was like, "Is Jack still in here?" So I just pulled up Cadence and hit start on it, and it started up, but it didn't run the Pulse stuff. Like I couldn't connect to the other, because Pulse was just completely, it wasn't there,
Yeah.
and so I ran PW Jack Carla while I had the Pulse or had Cadence running, but it wasn't the same.
It's designed to be compatible with features and configurations from both, but is not either of them. Is essentially so it's
like wine. It's like wine. It's not Windows. It's not emulation.
Yeah.
It just re-implements all the stuff. Yeah. It's the best example, I'd say. But
and
it's cool.
Technically, it's better than both, but practically, it's not there yet.
No, what I would like to see is when I go over to my little speaker icon on the taskbar and I right click and I hit configure audio devices, I would like not to see the system settings window where with all the other things on the left and all of these playback devices and recording devices. I would like to see something maybe like this, but if I go to the right, if I go to the bottom here on the bottom right and where it says configure, I want to see an advanced user settings button that pulls up basically all of the features that are in Cadence. So that way you can then manually configure each interface instead of just having the little profile drop down where it asks you, okay, do I want to analog surround 4.0, 2.0, or whatever, and all of those things. That's cool that that's there, but it doesn't allow me to address or access all of the ports on the ins and outs of my interface from that. It's just very basic. I want full access.
I mean, it didn't do that with Pulse Audio or Jack before either.
No, but Cadence allows you to do that.
Right, but I feel like
interface.
It makes sense as a dedicated application. I'm not sure if making that part of the system settings is necessarily like that's a lot of complexity to throw in there and break.
I mean, everything can stay where it's at if that's how, when people are used to a certain, zeitgeist or interface that they see, and it's like, okay, cool. I want the extra button that says advanced options per device. So that way, then you can say, okay, I want this in pro mode, so to speak. So that way I can adjust my sample rates and everything, or at least have those options available in some kind of advanced tab.
If anybody would do that, it would be KDE. So there's hope.
But but the implementation would have to be there with, changing those configs on the fly. Because
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think to me, that's where Pipewire has to go next, is to start getting that a bit more easily accessible. Because right now it's just all over the place as to where you have to go to do that. I don't like you said, it's just something you have to go and dig into. But I think with a bit more time, you'll get an application like Cadence where it can actually do that.
And I wouldn't even mind if someone was to take Cadence and fork it into a Pipewire enabled type app that can access those configs. That would be cool too. On top of being able to actively create and get rid of virtual audio devices, because that's one of the things that I end up doing with the Pulse Audio jack modules in the PACMD command and that's how I create, like, I have IO for my VoIP, my games, for just general media. And when I go into Carla, I can see all of that and I can click and drag everything everywhere. And those all then show up in my drop down on my task menu. It says a jack sync or jack source. And then in parentheses, it has my custom name for it. But I have to write that in a script to come up for those things too. But it's so easy to create that it's a single command. Why can't it be somewhere in a GUI? That's something that hasn't yet come to fruition under the Pulse universe of things yet. Maybe something like that'll come up in Pipewire, but the demand will have to be there for it. So also, and whenever someone can get to it, maybe I need to learn to code.
Yes.
Just
And-
do it myself.
And on that little bombshell, let's go ahead and do a final word and close it out. So, Shiko, last word.
Enya is underrated.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
That was the 90s, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Like 10 years ago. Eris, last word.
So I just wanted to thank Nate and Vash for making sure this thing continues, and thank everybody for the fun.
Well, I appreciate you being here for sure. Vash, last word.
Yeah, thanks for the stream as always, and we will see what happens with the wreckage that could be Windows managers. That'll be interesting to see the response.
And I do want to point out, so Window Manager is the target. If you want to do it on Arco Linux, which got a nice starting point for you. If you want to do it on something else, don't care. If you want to do Arco Linux, that's not a window manager, that's cool too. We're just exploring things. We're going to talk about it. It's just, the whole idea is just to have a chat about technology things. So, that's it. So, excellent. I'll be interested in seeing what you end up doing, Vash, and see you next week, hopefully.
I mean, I've already got something running Qtile, so I'm already done.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in trying out is Qtile. So I may be picking your brain throughout the week. Thomas, last word.
Well, thanks again for having this week. Despite all of Scrapjaw's gripes about Pipewire actually saved one of my computers recently. I had it was running fine up until recently, and then just suddenly I couldn't control volume like at all, but it was still giving audio output just very, very quietly. And the little settings menu that you have in XFCE where you can control the audio, the volume of different audio streams and all that. I forget what it's called. But it wouldn't connect to Pulse Audio despite Pulse actually running, and I didn't see anything wrong. So I just purged Pulse and installed Pipewire, and it just worked. So that computer has moved straight over to Pulse to Pipewire, because I'm also running a beta version of Drugger OS, which is coming out in December. So yeah, I'm loving it so far. It's actually very, very nice. But I understand that Scrap also does a lot more complex things than I do. So completely different worlds.
I have different things that I do, and I have to do them in complex ways. But if you sat down and I could show you, you'd be like, "Oh, that's actually way easier than I thought it was."
Yeah. Yeah, I'm literally your most basic person with audio. I can't tell the difference between like really bad MP3 audio that was ripped from YouTube and high quality Blu-ray audio. I'm not an audiophile in any way. So, take what I say for a grain of salt.
No, Pipewire doesn't suck. That's not what I said. I said it just doesn't do all of the things yet.
Yeah. But personally, I didn't have any issues. I have been trying to learn how to use Mutter, the window manager, because I saw a post on Reddit recently that XFCE can actually run on Wayland if you have a window manager that supports Wayland. And I know Mutter supports Wayland. So if I can get it to work, maybe. So far, I'm getting a big fat goose egg, but we're making headway. So, other than that, have a good one.
Well, I look forward to your graphic novel, how Pipewire saved my computer. It'll be entertaining for everybody. Jinda, last word.
Once again, thank you, everyone. Thanks for doing this, Nate. Thanks, everybody, for showing up and putting up with me. And once again, I always learn something. So see you guys next week.
Excellent. Glad you could make it. And again, you're not hard to put up with usually. So, Donald, last word.
Well, I just got an idea. Maybe I'm going to play with Mutter and see how that works. I've got to do something different. I've got BSPWM down as far as my config goes. So I think maybe it's time to explore something else.
Awesome. That's the whole idea. I'm excited you were inspired. That's good news. Well, thanks again for being here, Donald, and I hope to see you next time as well.
We'll see what happens.
Scrapjaw.
I said enough.
Okay. That's the last word, I guess.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. It's been fun. Max, last word.
Yeah, first and last words, but yeah, thanks for hosting this as always. Got me really interested about Silverblue now. I think when I find some time, I'm gonna swap out my Fedora system with Kino White, the KDE Silverblue. See how that goes. But yeah, looking forward to trying it. See y'all next week.
Well, whenever you do, make sure you share with the class how it goes. So, excellent. Adam, last word.
Thanks for doing this. I know I didn't really say anything today. I was mostly just listening to you guys and Jennifer Lopez at the same time. So good times.
Hey, it works for me. I probably would tune us out, but glad you could be here anyway. Rafael.
Cool. Thanks for having me and thanks for organizing. Hopefully I will be able to join next time too.
Well, I'm glad you made it for your first time, and I hope to see you again for sure. And thanks for being here. So I do want to plug before turning this off that Destination Linux is doing a review of Fedora 35 live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern or 1800 UTC. So if you're interested in hearing what some other people have to say about it, you can tune in then on YouTube. So destinationlinux.live, I believe, or something like that. Or is it dllive.com? I can't remember now. Destination Linux YouTube page, they'll have it there if you want to check that out. Also, if you want more on me, you can go to cubanate.com. Got my noodlings and also DLN Extend, a show that I have with the Destination Linux Network. You can check me out there as well. And I was actually looking at the calendar, and I realized something. So I apologize for not saying this sooner, but next week there won't be a Biddle. So 2 weeks, Biddle will come back. So I'll have a week off. I have for things that hopefully aren't going to last too much longer in my life. So anyway, so I guess I'll see you in 2 weeks or next time or whenever. Hope that doesn't damper anybody's November. But I want to thank you all for joining in both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream. Rocco, once again, for starting the Biddle community. Eric, for the use of his Zoom account. And everyone else involved in Linux and open source tools for making all of this possible. We get to have a lot of fun with our technology thanks to the work done by so many hands out there. And Linux really does put personal back into personal computers. So until next time, see yas.